You are now listening to Generation Rising.
Crises there will continue to be. In meeting them, whether foreign or domestic, great or small, there is a recurring temptation to feel that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties.
You've made the worst concession already. You've already said you're a slave. So,
well, absolutely.
After that, mere obedience to orders is a small offense.
I readily admit that I'm a slave. I'm a slave of the Lord Jesus Christ.
And glad of your chains.
Yeah. Well,
it's absolutely fine for you, but you must leave me out of it. I don't want to be told that I have to obey these laws too, or that my children have to be taught this in school, or that laws have to be written to ratify the bizarre beliefs of a cult like yours.
Well, but
that's the thing I would need you to understand. You're quite happy to believe this, but why can't you keep it to yourself?
Why can't you keep your atheism to yourself?
Because the religious won't allow me to. Because every time I open the paper, there's another instance of theocratic encroachment on free society, which I won't put up with. Up with which I will not put.
Well,
that's clear.
What if you're wrong? Is a question that the majority of us refuse to ask ourselves. It's a question that a lot of us shy away from because the majority of us don't ever have that thought cross our mind. Well, what if we're wrong? Right? What if we're wrong? What if the beliefs that you tend to attach yourself, all your ideologies to, what if they're wrong? Was it worth it? Was it worth trying to put gays in conversion therapy to no real avail at all? Was it worth shutting down abortion clinics so women could go get abortions in back alleyways and risk losing their life over it? Are you wrong? What if we're wrong? What if Westboro Baptist is wrong? What if all of you guys held all of those God hates fag signs to no avail, to come to find out at the end of your life, you spread all this hate and misogyny for nothing? What if we're wrong? What if all of you who think that every single other person besides yourself is an enemy get to the end of your life and come to find out that the only true people that were there for you in the first place was the people that you thought were an enemy? What if we're wrong? It's a question that should be shouted out. And to any notion that you put up into any of the realm of all ideas, it should always come with the mere coincidence that you might be wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. But there is something wrong with asserting a half-truth and saying it's full truth, and never being able to back down from that. It is a poison and absolute carelessness. And it seems like in the world that keeps disappearing around us, in a world that keeps getting more confusing by the day, we should keep asking each other this. What if we're wrong? Because things, as we see, are harder to stop than they are to start. What do we do now that we have bases in all these countries? Do we completely shut down, bring the whole entire army home, and sell off all of our ammunition to other countries? I don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions. Do we completely just pull all of our troops out of the Middle East and let the whole world handle it? It sounds good to me, but it's a lot easier said on my end than said on the people who actually are watching this unfold and making these policies and making these decisions. The deeper that we go, the harder it is to come back. And the question that we need to all ask ourselves is, have we gone too far? I don't know. Maybe. So there's an IMF study, okay? International Monetary Fund. The whole conspiracy theories believe that, they control the world and they have all the banks. Well, they came out with a study back in 2011 talking about the oil industries and the subsidies that these oil companies get. The top 5 biggest oil companies, Chevron, BP, Conoco, Shell, and ExxonMobil. They had over $135 billion in profits in 2011. There's $5.3 trillion in subsidies that these big oil companies get, not just from our country, but from the world. The world lobbies very hard to keep a lot of these companies in their countries working because they do present jobs and they do present income. How do you battle something like that? Something as monumental as literally they receive, if you break it down, the oil industries get $10 million per minute, per day, 24/7, 360 motherfucking 5. They're reaping in the dough at an insurmountable amount of rate. How do you battle something like that? And that's what we're seeing with the DAPL, with the Dakota Access Pipeline in this country. We're seeing a literally unfolding of a people's voice battling against oil companies out of fear for them contaminating their water, contaminating their resources, and leaving them with nothing, which has happened time and time again. And if you are one of those people who cannot understand the side of the Sioux Indian tribe, I don't know what planet you're on. How many times have wells been contaminated? How many times have pipelines burst, devastated wildlife, devastated the region, and all the oil companies did was pay off a few people and just move on and keep the business going? How long do you think people are just going to sit by and take that? This DAPL protest is probably going to be one of the biggest protests of our time. Because in political theory, let's play devil's advocate. Let's look at it from the other side, right? Let's try to see from both sides here. The Keystone Pipeline really wasn't that long ago, right? And the whole world came out against it, and even the climate deniers, they fought very fervently to get this through. And it wasn't. It was destroyed. Okay, project done. And mind you, this was only one pipeline of hundreds of pipelines that was being constructed. It's not like this was the only pipeline being constructed at the time. Okay, it was just the one that caught the national attention. So they put a stop to the construction. Now you see this with the Army Corps of Engineers going through the Sioux burial lands and sacred lands, and the people are coming out en masse against it. The Obama administration refuses to act on anything. And maybe for the reason is this, because the oil companies, which I've talked about, are so powerful. And the politicians are so in bed with these people and so tied together that they're probably thinking to themselves, we gave them the Keystone Pipeline. If we give them this pipeline, then they are just going to keep doing this and doing this and doing this and doing this. And they are right. Because with every victory, if this is a victory for the people, which it needs to be, it fucking needs to be for the sake of our environment, for the sake of our children's water, it needs to be a victory. So it's a must-win situation for the people. But also, you're talking about a major global industry. Okay, this is not even just about America. This is why the mainstream media won't even talk about this. Because if it gets worldwide attention, this empowers the people. If we can put a stop to the construction of this pipeline, it puts the oil industry on notice that people are getting sick and tired. And now they have power because now they can point to a win. When you give somebody a chance to let you win over them, and then you can point back to that win and use that win against them every single other time, it puts the other person, the foe, at a disadvantage. Mentally and sure, probably physically, maybe. Okay? So you got to understand that this is a must-win situation for people. I mean... And so, as of next week, I'm going to have a guest on. A guest who is basically down there. I believe she was down there for, I don't really know how long she was down there for, but she's down there, seen the whole Sioux Tribe reservation and was there and protesting. And I'm going to get a chance to sit down and talk to her, get a conversation from a person who has had firsthand experience with this notion, with this situation, with this fight that is so vital, absolutely vital to the democracy of this nation. Some people call it the rule of law and they say it's dead. And maybe it is. Maybe if they drill right through, it's dead, right? I mean, they're directly violating a treaty. I mean, it's no conspiracy there. They're directly violating a treaty. So if they drill through it, The oil industry wins. Next thing you know, you got a pipe spill or whatever. The government's not going to hold them accountable. They're going to ask them to pay a $50 million fine and just keep on moving, baby. Don't worry about it. Build it up, seal it up, patch it up, keep it going, keep the oil going. We are so infatuated with the oil industry. I got a crazy statistic. 1 in 8 deaths in the whole entire world of deaths are attributed directly to air pollution worldwide. 1 in 8. That is well over 10%. That is insanity. 1 in 8 deaths are attributed directly to air pollution in the whole entire world. And these companies do what the hell they want to do. So they need to be put on notice by the people. So please, if you can go down there and protest, do so, because I know the Army Corps of Engineers put out a December 5th eviction notice on these people, which the tribe said that they will not remove, and this is their land. So this is going to come down to a very vital, crazy situation. If you can get down there and support them, do so. If you can send money, please do so. If you can send food or something or some way to help these people out to make sure that this battle is won. This battle is a must-win for people. It's an absolute must-win. Okay, so I want to go into a different direction, right? So like I said, with next week, I'll have an awesome guest on. And we'll talk about that. And I just picked up God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. Fantastic book on how religion poisons everything. And I'd like to read you an excerpt of the book. A good old excerpt. Chapter 1. I must not pretend to remember everything perfectly, or in order, after this epiphany, but in a fairly short time, I had also begun to notice other oddities. Why, if God was the creator of all things, were we supposed to praise him so incessantly for doing what came to him naturally? This seems servile apart from anything else. If Jesus could heal a blind person he happened to meet, then why not heal blindness? What was so wonderful about his casting out devils so that the devils would enter a herd of pigs instead? That seems sinister, more like black magic. With all this continual prayer, why no result? Why did I have to keep saying in public that I was a miserable sinner? Why was the subject of sex considered so toxic? These faltering, childish objections are, I have since discovered, extremely commonplace, partly because no religion can meet them with any satisfactory answer. But another larger one also presented itself. And I say presented itself rather than occurred to me, because these objections are as well as insuperable and inescapable. Now, why the epiphany occurred to him was because he grew up in a religious school, okay? He went to school in a religious school, and the teacher, a couple days before, and I'll quote you with the book, said something like this to make Christopher Hitchens start thinking about everything. Quote, however, there came a day when poor dear Mrs. Watts overreached herself, seeking ambitiously to fuse her two roles as nature instructor and Bible teacher. She said, so you see, children, how powerful and generous God is. He has made all the trees and grass to be green, which is exactly the color that is most restful to our eyes. Imagine if instead the vegetation was all purple or orange, how awful that would be. And now behold what this pious old shroud hath wrought. I liked Mrs. Watts. She was affectionate, a childless widow who had friendly old sheepdog who really was named Rover, and she would invite us over for sweets and treats after hours in her slightly ramshackle old house near the railway line. If Satan chose her to tempt me into error, he was much more inventive than the subtle serpent in the Garden of Eden. However, I was frankly appalled by what she said. My little ankle-strap sandals curled with embarrassment for her. At the age of 9, I had not even a conception of the argument from design, or of Darwinian evolution as its rival, or the relationship between photosynthesis and chlorophyll. The secrets of the genome were as hidden from me as they were at the time to everyone else. I had not then visited scenes of nature where almost everything was hideously indifferent or hostile to human life, if not life itself. I simply knew, almost as if I had privileged access to a higher authority, that my teacher had managed to get everything wrong in just 2 sentences. The eyes were adjusted to nature and not the other way about. That is the issue. Religion makes it dogmatically and sacredly about yourself and how the world was made to please you and for you. And it's all about you. It's all about you. This is an absolute insane notion, right? I mean, do you really think that? I mean, does anybody really out there think that the world was made primarily to serve you? Because then who can say, for example, the parasites that eat children's eyes from the inside out? I mean, it's either a moral reducer or a moral enhancer. And as far as I'm concerned, religion does way more harm than it does good. And that's unfortunate for a lot of people. Okay, not a lot of people want to hear that. Not a lot of people want to talk about that. They want to just keep believing what they believe in, and passively and aggressively, maybe some sort of way inside themselves, they never really truly let the truth be known that they probably don't even agree with half the shit that's taught in religious churches and schools across this nation. So even though the polls might say it's 60% are religious and blah, 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 we have found out in very recent matters how inaccurate polls can be. And I believe people can lie to polls. And I don't even know who the hell's answering the polls, right? So, I want to appreciate all of you guys for listening. This is going to be a short episode. Love you guys for the support. We're going to have a musician on here in a couple weeks too, and we're going to talk about some things. And I hope you enjoyed the show, man. This is just a little quick tidbit. I'm probably going to keep covering Christopher Hitchens in the future as I keep reading through this book. And as always, I'm going to keep on trying to figure out what we can do in our political situations and try to find some cool and awesome things to talk about. But until then, y'all have a great night. And don't let fear control your lives. Okay, good night.
We don't have absolute truths in science. Unlike religion, that's the reason that science makes progress. Because we can change our minds. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important thing that we as I often say, if you're a theoretical physicist, the two most important states to be in are either wrong or confused. Because that means there's a lot left to learn. It's hard to imagine. I mean, given that there are over 100 billion stars in our galaxy, we now have learned that most of those stars have planets around them, so solar systems. 100 billion galaxies. With all those stars and galaxies, and we also know that there's lots of water out there, organic molecules, and sunlight, which is all that was necessary for life to evolve here on Earth. So it's hard to imagine it hasn't evolved somewhere else. And I find it amazing that here we are in this random planet, in this random place in the middle of nowhere. And we have, through our minds and the fact that we're graced with consciousness, been able to understand the universe to the earliest moments of the Big Bang. I think it's worth celebrating. These are ideas that are fascinating. Part of the benefit of science, we always talk about technology, and of course, science is responsible for everything in this room almost. But for me, science is as important for its ideas and its impact on our culture. It's like great art and literature and music. It's what makes being humans worth being human. The question isn't